the way that our actual ways of working in corporate culture has shifted, right? I think that during COVID, obviously everybody was at home and they were isolated and it was very task oriented. It wasn't like you come in, you grab a coffee with somebody. It's not these like micro moments of sociability. It was just you sign on, you do the task, you kind of move on, right? You sign off at 5 and you call it a day, right? I think leads need to be more intentional of stepping up and showing face and like being human, right? Versus being a title on a screen. But we have to remember that like we do have junior employees who need somebody to look up to be like, I want to be like this person, or I want to do this like this person. And if they don't get to see it, you have to go out of your way to make sure they do.
Well, hello and welcome to the AdTech Heroes podcast. I, of course, am your host, Jon Wallett, and today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that's very close to my heart, culture in the workplace, in advertising. How is it being reshaped? Everything from return to office challenges to, what we consider kind of growing tension between the age of AI, efficiency, creativity, and ultimately, how do we get back to human connection? And I have someone joining me today. I'm super, super delighted to have the wonderful Gabrielle Levy, SVP of Precision at Digitas. Gabby, how are we doing?
Hey, John. Good. Doing well. Can't complain.
I know this is a taped kind of episode, but how are we feeling after last night's Knicks win?
Do I even need to say it? We're going to keep going. I'm just saying, ever since Cat's been in Devil Wears Prada, we're still on that game streak. So, let's just keep it up.
So you're saying that it's the Miranda effect, the Meryl Streep effect that's just keeping the energy going through him? Absolutely. I haven't seen the movie yet, but knowing that he's in it just makes it more than worthwhile to watch. What were you doing to watch the show last night? Were you getting into it at a bar, or what was your situation?
No. We went to a friend's house. He has a wonderful view of the city, so it was really cool to like watch the game, but then also see the entire city lit up in blue and orange. It was cool. It was cool as hell. Yeah.
That's great. Well, definitely better than just me sitting on the couch eating Chinese food. But nonetheless, a Knicks win was extremely energetic. And honestly, that viewpoint, I'm sure, is going to come in handy if the Knicks win it all and they wind up burning down the city. Let's hope not. But
Forget it. Yeah. I'll be the first one in that crew.
yeah,
so,
me too. Let's be honest. Yeah, I'm the old man chucking elbows, trying to make his way through the crowd. But enough of the Knicks. Let's here at AdTech Heroes, what we focus on obviously is the guest of the moment. So Gabby, we want to start everything off with just a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your career journey. What first sparked your interest in this wacky world of advertising?
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny. So I didn't really sign up for advertising, as a lot of us don't. Believe it or not, before I did advertising, I was a car salesperson, which, I, I very much am not part of that stereotype, thankfully. But yeah, I sold cars for a while, which is kind of weird. And then I was like, I don't like this. Let me go to college and see what's up. Went to college,
Wait, can we pause right there real quick, Gabby? You can't just say I sold cars for a while. Are we talking the luxury vehicles? Like, can we dig in just there a little bit, then we can continue there?
Yeah. I sold Audis for like 2 years.
Ooh, okay. I like that. All right.
So Audi, you want to call us? No, kidding. I did sell Audi for 2 years. But yeah, it was kind of weird. Wasn't really my vibe. I was also frankly very young at the time, so I think I was just happy to have a job. But went to college at the thing. Left college thinking I wanted to be in PR. Couldn't land a job for my life. Bad luck. I don't know. Maybe I didn't vibe well. But then I desperately needed a job, and through a friend got an executive assistant job at what was a programmatic trading desk called Veric a long time ago. And my boss at the time, who was obviously who I was EA to, was like, oh, I'm actually leaving. So you can either like not have a job, or like you could figure out like how to get like figure out what the entry level downstairs does. So I spent around 6 months kind of like testing the waters and like trading, strategy, marketing, you name it. I was on like every single team, just kind of seeing what they were doing. And ended up doing programmatic strategy. And now here I am, 12 years later or something, not like we're counting, but now we're here. And I guess I didn't suck at it. So good for
Love
me.
it. I love it. I can't tell you how many times that I've asked this question on the show, and I usually get a lot of people coming through like the poli sci kind of lane and then going into. I think this is one of the more interesting avenues to get to where you are in the beginning. And what I really liked about what you're just talking about is your opportunity came from connection, right? And I know today we're going to be talking all about networking and connectivity with people. So I love that that was the start of your experience because I feel like you've carried a lot of that ethos with you throughout your career. So knowing that you kind of, I don't say fell into it, because obviously there had to be some level of interest to even take the step forward. How did you get from that point to today where you're now the SVP of Precision? Like, talk to me a little bit about now that you got your foot into the door programmatic, like what continued to propel you into where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I took every single thing that I was a part of as like an opportunity, even if it was like, hey, can you, help me schedule a client event, right? Like I was like, all right, that we'll do it, we'll do the thing. I very much believe that if you're doing something and you're spending that time doing it, like the best respect that you can give yourself is giving it, at a minimum 100%, but like 120, 150%. Because like if you go into a task or a job, be it advertising, whatever it is, if you give it like 80%, you're disrespecting yourself because really you're projecting yourself out to the people around you to be like, I don't care, or like, I don't really have it in me. So that mentality, I feel like I applied to literally everything I did. And every time there was an opportunity that came up, even if it was like not directly within my scope of what like my jobs R&Rs were, I just did it. Right. And I was like, obviously set my lines and boundaries so I wouldn't burn myself out. But, I was like, this is an opportunity for me to learn. Even if I don't realize it now, I'll realize it later. And it worked. I have this like kind of funny relationship with my team where they're like, what don't you know? What haven't you worked on? And I'm like, at this point, I don't know. Because I just kept saying yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we call that well-rounded, I feel like, right? And it's just, do you feel like that ethos or that the way you approach that, do you feel like that still resonates with people entering the industry, or what have you seen from your experience about young folks that are coming in? And we're going to talk a lot today about culture, and I think a lot of what you experienced that kind of led to that ethic might have been part of that. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like, what are you seeing right now? Do you feel like people are behaving that way, or is there more going on?
I think overall it's lessened. I think the way that our actual ways of working in 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 corporate culture has shifted, right? I think that um during COVID, obviously there everybody was at home and they were isolated and it was very task oriented, right? I think like your interactions with your job was not just like these little kind of water cooler conversations. It wasn't like you come in, you grab a coffee with somebody. It's not these like micro moments of sociability. It was just you sign on, you do the task, you kind of move on, right? You sign off at 5 and you call it a day, right? So I think that like going out of that realm to do more is much harder because those opportunities didn't show up organically, but it also manifests itself as more of a task versus an opportunity, right? It's like, hey, does anybody want to raise their hand to do something? And people are either scared to because they don't know, frankly, who's pinging them. Because that's the other thing, there's less exposure. So they're less open. They're less, you know, it's scary to talk to somebody you don't know, especially if that person has like a high level title. Um, but if you were to meet them in person and see them as a normal human, it makes that a little bit easier. And I think that like COVID was really tough on um, the generation who was growing up in like senior year of college, junior year of college, first year of working because they didn't get that primed sociability. They just kind of like they're super task oriented.
I definitely see where you're coming from, and I couldn't fathom entering an industry such as ours with not having that cultural connectivity with your people. We talked a little bit before this episode about how we were brought up in the industry, and you just tapped into something a little bit about the unknown, right? You're on a screen all day long, and you get this, massive title pinging you, and you're just like, oh my god, like what do I do? Like I don't want to fail, I don't want to make a mistake. Do you talk to me about your thoughts on what responsibility in those moments leaders have, right? In making those people really engage, and because I feel like you and I felt that growing up, where obviously digital advertising back then was very different, but I feel like it's come so far and grown so much that you'd think that the what made us so special in terms of community would continue. So where do you think leaders' responsibility is in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, as leads, recognize that there's certain people who did not experience what we experienced. And I think that is easily forgotten because it's one of those, like, you don't know what you don't know situations. Like, we don't know what it's like to have gone through that in any capacity, right? We went into it and we were like, great, we get to work from home. Like, that was kind of just the goal there. But we came back out of it and we went right back to normal. I think as leads, like, that interaction that used to be so informal, so casual, like, you just knew people by their name, not their title or where they were in the company. You knew them as, like, that guy who's a Knicks fan or that guy who's a Mets fan, or like, you just, like, knew people for who they were as people. So I think as leads, like, what we have to do is guide them into what that kind of mentality is like by being more social. Frankly, I hate to be this person, but you got to be a little bit more social in the office. I think there's some leads, not here, but I've seen in other places where, they have their offices, they close the doors and they never come back out unless, they're leaving, right? And it's intimidating. Like, when I was a junior, I was terrified of the guys in the suits, that were our execs, because I was like, oh, I'm just this little girl, like, in my little jeans, and I'm so scared. So to then also put up, like, a physical barrier on top of having um, that barrier of culture, I think sucks. But coming back to what leads should do, I think we need to be more intentional with socialization, right? We need to be more intentional with our mentorship of people as well. I think it's a very busy environment that we're in, and we're like, work, 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 work. But we have to remember that, like, we do have junior employees who need somebody to look up to be like, I want to be like this person, or I want to do this like this person. And if they don't get to see it, you have to go out of your way to make sure they do. And that is only our responsibility. Like, we cannot rely on the juniors to, step up as a whole to say, I want to see you do this, because they literally don't know in some cases. And why would they? They're coming in from college, or they're coming in from, whatever situation they're in. So I think leads need to be more intentional of stepping up and showing face and, like, being human, right? Versus being a title on a screen.
Right. So yeah, and what I interpret some of what you're saying here is development of soft skills, right? I feel like there's a bit of a, at least from what I've seen in the past couple of years, there's a little bit of a lack of that, right? The simple things that we kind of take for granted just aren't really existent a lot of times. And you talked a little bit earlier about being, like, task oriented, and that very much feels that way, right? And I think it kind of leads itself into an area where it's like, when you talk about culture specifically in our industry, and you think about where we were and where we are, um, many organizations, right, they're kind of trying to bring it back, right? And I've always said, like, if I'm interviewing someone, they're like, what's the culture like here at CTAG? I'm like, well, you can't really, like, just manifest it, right? You can't just say this is the culture, because then you're kind of playing into not a maybe a stereotype, or what you believe it is versus what it actually is. And I think for me, culture has always been bringing somewhat like-minded but also diverse people together and finding a commonality between them and getting them to work with each other and for each other. So in this post-pandemic return to office world where organizations are trying to bring that culture back, why do you feel like it's often just feels forced? And is it the soft skills that's missing, or what do you think, if anything, is missing to really make that sticky for a lot of the workplaces we're dealing with?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very tough thing to answer, and every office, every organization is going to have a different answer and a different approach to this that works best for them. I don't think that there's a like, you do this is the answer. And I think what it is that organizations and like leads need to sit down and take time and figure out what does work best for the different levels of what's going on in their company, be it a team individually, a full channel team, a org as a whole, right? Like they need to sit down and see like what works best and what kind of gets people out of their shells. I think like it feels really forced right now because I personally feel like we started doing this thing during COVID that we didn't really pull back from, which was, hey, we're going to block an hour of time, everybody sign in and meditate together, or like, you know, do all these things together. And obviously we do that here too. And if people do that and take the time and it works for them, fantastic. But to approach it from a perspective of this is going to work for everybody is incorrect, right? Every team is different. They're a group of people, right? Everybody's going to have a different dynamic. I think something that, you know, we've been doing here is frankly just asking people, hey, what kind of outing would you like to do? What is something that you would like to see more of? Like, what do you think is fun? And I think like a lot of the times, like, frankly, leads also like myself, like I have made this blunder, but like, we just assume that we are making the right choice. And we're like, oh, we're going to do this thing. It's going to be really fun. We're going to have a happy hour. And then you find out that half your team doesn't really like drinking, which is 1000% fair. But if you didn't bother to ask and then you show up to the event and you're like, why is nobody here? It's like, you have to go back and ask yourself, like, did I set something up that people want to be a part of, or did I just set something up because I think that this is what it should be?
Sure. Great point. The happy hour. That's I don't know if that's a thing anymore. It feels like, right? It's like,
I mean, it's definitely not what it was. I mean,
certainly not. Certainly not. I mean, I don't want to age myself too much, but I remember there were like bars in New York City in particular would purposely have things going on. Like during the week, you'd have like, I don't know, 25-cent wings on Tuesdays. You'd have a ladies' night on Thursdays, and just little things that would attract audiences and consumers and people. I also think that kind of permeated through the industry and like wanted to bring people together. We worked so much, and part of that release was getting to go and have a crappy beer at a local pub and expressing yourself. So let's say happy hour is gone, right? And you're talking about all these different ways to engage the community and your people. What's the thinking there? Like, what are you replacing? You mentioned like, yoga and things like that's great, but yoga could also be a very personal, very private kind of experience. So what is that communal experience, if there's any at the top of your head or something that you think about? Like, what would you do, or how would you change things to bring back that sense of community and culture that seems to have faded over time?
yeah. I mean, what I've been doing with our team, which has been going really well, is activities. Like, I think, believe it or not, like we think that activities are just for kids, but going out and like doing something with your hands, like doing like a pizza tour in New York and specifically, or like, you're making candles, you're making perfume, you're really kind of going out, and what you're doing is giving people that opportunity to express themselves, because I don't think that is something that we're really giving a lot of space for people to do anymore.
Right. Very good point. And I love those examples, and I love that you're doing it. And I think you brought up a very interesting piece of the pie, right? It's creativity in our industry has always been paramount to what we do, whether you're on the strategic side of things, or heck, even if you're doing optimizations, right? And looking at data and trying to figure out like what's the best plan of attack here. And with automation and everything taking place, and the way the office situations can be, like there's this shift. You can feel it's palpable, right? Between creativity and strategic thinking with teams. And I always felt that, at least when I was coming up, like to your point, you'd be in the trenches all day long dealing with a lot of work. And God, that's just an awful analogy I just used, in the trenches, like we're at war. Like, no, let's reframe that. Like, you're just doing a lot of work, right? And then you get this moment to express yourself with your colleagues, like, and then those moments at the same time, or even just walking around the office, I think that's where a lot of my creativity popped up. Like, you learn from people, you network, like, so this shift, do you feel it's impacted some of that too? So getting away from just like the cultural experiences, but just how people are interacting in office, like, is there still this sense of strategic thinking, or does that even feel forced, or is that now being pushed to the AI? Like, How does it all play together, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been lost. I think it's been hidden. I think, again, coming back to things being a little bit more task oriented in the way that we look at it, those opportunities to be more creative or not to be created, but to be emphasized when they show up, right? Like I think in some cases, for example, programmatic is very technical and, you're very KPI optimization based, whatever. But like there are those moments where you're like, okay, like build me out an audience, build me out a strategy, like think about the creative, like put it all together and really use those creative muscles in your brain. But you have to, the proverbial you, but again, mostly leads, you have to create those situations where you're like, this is an opportunity for you to think outside of the box. Like you need to provide that guidance to get that out of people. Whereas I think before it just naturally happened where people were like, oh my God, I'm so excited about like XYZ client because I, as a human, love it. I get excited about it. Right. But like now, because I feel like brands are just sometimes brands for some of the juniors, you have to kind of be like, listen, like at the end of the day, like this is a brand, as a person, like you've seen outside, you've heard about from friends, like what would you do? What what semblance of humanity could you apply to this? And I think in those moments, I get a lot out of the team from that. I'm like, think about it like not as a programmatic person, like think about it as a person, does this make sense? Um, and I think the creativity is there and we get it out of them in those moments. But I think like, again, like there has to be so much intention with us creating those scenarios for people to get them accustomed to it. And then what we have seen is that when we put certain employees in positions where like, you start them off with that and you're like, think about it this way. And then they're on that account and then they keep going, they keep doing it. Like the momentum is there and they keep doing it. Right. But we have to be the ones to start it. And I think that's hard because number one, time, right? We're all spread thin all over the place. But it's up to us to kind of create those situations so we can get things to be a little bit more creative. And again, like I spend a lot of time just frankly throwing people into the fire and say, think about like this, stop being a programmatic person for 2 seconds and be a person and tell me what your answer is.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to grow is getting outside of your comfort zone, right? I mean, gosh, I mean, my first week on my first week at IPG many years ago, I had a group director that left and an associate director that left, and I was coming in as like an integrated investment person, which at that time digital was like it's early on. So I looked at it like, okay, I can either just bide my time and see what this feels like and go somewhere else, or I can stick with it and try to learn in the experience and get uncomfortable. And I think through that discomfort, I feel like I learned so much about myself, my ability to be creative and to meet people and network. And I think, that also kind of contributed a little bit to the culture of what we were trying to do at the time. So I want to begin to kind of bookend the conversation a little bit about and going back to some of the cultural stuff that we were talking about and fun question for you, like what was the greatest kind of networking experience or event that you had gone to that made you feel like you really got something out of it that impacted you as a person in your career? Was there ever an experience like that that you feel like maybe people aren't getting anymore?
Um, Not that people aren't getting anymore, but I think they're a little bit scared to raise their hands. It's oddly, I recently brought one of our managers over to a conference, and she was like so scared. She was like, "What do I wear? What do I do?" And I was like, "Listen, I promise you, it's like the most nothing thing. Like, just show up." I said the same thing actually. I said, "Just show up, write notes for things that even if you don't understand it now, maybe you'll understand it later." Um, and she came with me, and I won't say what conference it is, which is because of this follow up, but she came with me to the conference and we were walking back to the office and she said, is it may be that I'm not smart enough, but I don't feel like I learned anything. And I was like, no. I was like, it's actually quite the opposite. I'm like, you going and like absorbing everything and saying, wow, I already know this is actually the perfect amount of like acknowledgement that like you are doing the right thing in your job. And I was like, and if that's what you walk away with, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Um,
exposure. It's exposure to things that you're not getting on a daily basis, and I love that. And listen, this is not gonna it's not meant to be a shameless plug for Digitas, but I gotta admit, like you guys do a great job of trying to, get people comfortable to go into those things, and I think it's really important. I don't see enough junior or mid level folks at these conferences where I think they're gonna extrapolate the most value out of it. I've been to so many conferences, and I look to my left and look to my right, and I'm like, I saw these folks here a month ago in another conference. Like, I think there's something to be said for, engineering a culture through networking. I think I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for those things. And I was, yeah, like I was very fortunate that again, I think it was because digital at the time was very up and coming, and ad week was ad week, and it's less get out of that headset of like the partying, like whatever. That's not the point. But being able to be exposed to your point with people across the spectrum of the industry, whether they're executive level or they're a data person or they're a creative person, all in the same room, learning about a topic that they may know about or don't know about, like there's so much value there. And I only bring it up not to be like again a shameless plug, but I've seen that Digitas has done a great job, recently in promoting that activity, and I think more and more companies need to do that. It also brings, in my opinion, another layer of soul and experience to the younger generation that's coming up to want to continue to do this crazy stuff that we're doing. So yeah, that's just my little soapbox as we're coming towards the end of our chat here. We usually finish the show with one or two questions, depending on the guest. And I think what I'd like to end with you is actually, I'm going to ask you both questions, honestly. So the first one is, considering it's all about AdTech Heroes, like, and that theme, like, if you had a superpower that you would say that's AdTech based, what do you think it would be?
superpower. Oh man. It's a really weird one, so I feel like I'm gonna get blasted for it. But I kind of wish that I could respectfully read people's minds, like, like respectfully in the way that I'm like knock knock and I read your mind, not like anything intrusive. Um, because I feel like it's sometimes like pulling teeth to get what people really want to say out of their brains because they're so hesitant to kind of share their emotions, share their thoughts, whatever it is. And I'm like, I'm just a person. I just want to know what you're going through so I can either create something to help you or like support you in, in this job, in this role, in your career, whatever it is. And man, I take so much time pulling teeth and I'm like, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? What about this? What about, and then eventually, they crack and then they'll set one-on-ones with me and be like, I need to talk to you. And then I get it out of them. But I'm like, man, that takes a while. Um, so I'd probably very respectfully read minds just to kind of make that a little bit less of a
Yeah,
task.
yeah, I like it. Open people up. I like it. Okay, great answer. I like that answer. And then I'm gonna follow it up with, if you, what is one thing that like makes you rage about the industry, and one thing that really excites you?
Oh, rage. I have a lot of rage. You already know that. There's a lot of things that send me
You
to the
gotta pick one,
moon.
Gabby. You gotta pick
Uh,
one.
if I had a rage about something, it's actually kind of funny because it ties into the superpower. Um, I really, it makes me so upset when people don't feel like they can express how they're feeling, or their thoughts. And again, like, I feel like that's something that we kind of contort ourselves around. We're like, all right, like, let's hang out and then let's do this and, tell me how you're feeling and whatever. But it makes me really upset because I think that we frankly waste a lot of time on beating around the bush, right? I think like people are people at the end of the day, like we call them, like, for example, like junior employees, but like full ass adults. And it's like, let's do this together. Like we're not in this against each other. Like there's no infighting to be had. Like let's all just like chat, get everything out on the table, work through it, and move on with our lives. Like nobody wants to work in a position where they're like, feeling uncomfortable or things are resistant. So it makes me absolutely nuts when people are like, well, I didn't feel comfortable talking. And then and again, my team can attest to this, I will dive into that head first and I say, why did you feel uncomfortable saying this? How do I undo that for you? Because it makes me crazy, crazy.
Love it. And something that excites you, if there is one?
Something that, I mean,
I love that the rage one. You're like, let me get my scroll out here. But
I
the
know,
excited one,
I know,
so
I
many
know.
things to be excited about.
I mean, listen, there's a lot to be angry about. I think so. I'm honestly excited that I feel like things are changing. I think it has taken us a long time post COVID, and we were like, "Yay, we're back in office! Like we're back." It's like, no. We took a long time to get back into the swing of things, back into the groove of things. I'm really excited because it kind of seems like things are getting back to the a semblance of the old normal, but we really have like a new normal, which I hate that I just said that because that's what we used to say during COVID. Um, but people are coming in more. People are interacting more. Like I'm seeing some of my juniors and they're like, yeah, we're going to go hang out this weekend. Or like, yeah, like we're going to go do this thing after work, not sponsored. They're just hanging out, being friends. And I'm like, finally, because some of my best friends are ad people that half of it was trauma bonding. Let's be real. The other half was like just being around each other. So, um, I'm excited that it's finally, the dust is settling a little bit and people are getting into their grooves socially because, if everybody's happy, they're going to do better work and everything else is going to be better. So like there's less stress and I'm a very anti-stress person. So,
Well, that
yeah,
explains all the plants around you. So yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Um, Gabby, awesome. Really appreciate you for joining this episode. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And honestly, with leaders like you and the positions that you're in with this kind of mentality, I think it goes a long way. So I'm hoping that when people hear about this kind of stuff, that they would feel empowered to continue pushing the ball forward in a positive way. So thanks for sharing. Yeah, of course. And thanks for being an agent of change and for joining our little podcast today. Really appreciate you.
of course. Thanks, John.
Always.